Let's talk about promises a little bit. Promises are basically the special objects or the objects that are built in the JavaScript, and that get returned immediately when we make a call to a web browser. Okay, what I mean by that is when we make a request to some other browser or API feature or some other software using feature like that returns a promise. What I mean by that is like if we use something called like fetch. If we use fetch is a built-in JavaScript API that is used to like get data from the other software. So when we use fetch, there are two parts in the fetch. One is the xhr. Xhr is basically XML HTTP request. That part what does what is like talks to the internet, and the other thing is like it the fetch returns a promise in which the actual data is. And how we get like handle that data is like because it returns a promise, and the promise is in the form of the object. Okay, so the thing here is like whenever we make a call using a fetch, we or like get back a promise. And the other thing is whenever we make new object of new promise, let's say we type in a const promise, const promise equal to new promise object. Okay, whenever we make this object, whenever we type this, already created an object. Okay, so this object at initial is going to be empty, but when we use something like fetch or whatever that returns a promise, that data is going to be stored in that object, if that makes sense. And let's see at with the example, and how that is handled, like how that background data is like processed and then stored into the promise object. So let's say I have a future data that is going to fetch some data from the Twitter. It's going to fetch some tweets. Okay, https //twitter.com. we're gonna fetch some tweet from the Twitter. I'm gonna fetch my tweet Zalaman underscore dev, and we're gonna fetch tweets /1, the first tweet. And we're gonna make a function in which we're gonna display that data. I'm gonna make it with the arrow syntax, and here I'm gonna do whatever is passed in data. The thing is how I'm gonna do before calling that function, I'm gonna do like just console log this data. So whatever we are fetching, so this is gonna be the promise. Let's see that in our browser. So see, we got a promise that is pending. So it gives us two things. Always it gives us two things. One is the response, which is gonna be object, or it's gonna like give us the error whatever we are getting. Like, okay, so this time network error when attempting to fetch resource, so there was some network error. Otherwise it's gonna be the like actual response, the value where the tweet is. Okay, the second thing is gonna be the state. Okay, the state, whether it is like accept, fulfilled or rejected. So there are three states: pending, fulfilled, rejected. Fulfilled means that like whatever the data comes in, we have applied some functionality to that data. Pending is like the data is like our promise object is waiting for that data, so we have to do some up, and we are waiting for that data, and then we want to apply some functionality to that. Came in, and the rejected means we couldn't find the data. Okay, so it's always going to be in three states. Let's try to like get some data from the actual api.github. Okay, so let's try to console this data. Okay, so now we have got the state pending. So now we are waiting for the data that is pending. Here the state was pending and here the state is fulfilled. You see, we got the value which is in, there's a response which is an object. Okay, so we got the whole object slash users slash set dash dev, and I'm gonna console that. So see, the state is pending and promise is pending, and we have to apply some functionality to that data. We got the response, this is the actual response that we got, and now we have to like apply some functionality, okay, to handle that data. Okay, so promise is pending, that data is pending, we have to like resolve that data. Okay, so now we're gonna do is, instead of like printing out the promise, we're gonna do is call this callback function. Okay, so this call this function on that promise. Okay, so when this data comes in, it's gonna call that function. So this function is gonna act as a callback function. Future data dot then display data. So that data would go over here. When processes that data in the background, dot then doesn't mean like when the data comes in then do this. No, it's not like that. Dot then means like when the data processes in the background and it completes its background work, then immediately call this function whatever is passed in, or like if it's written over here, it's gonna like run that inside. So I separated that and separated the callback function from here. So it means that like whenever it completes the its background working, it's gonna call that display data. Let's see that, and now we are getting the actual response. And now we can apply some more thing, like how we're gonna, we actually do not generally use displaying that data. We can like get information and do whatever we want to do. So that was a little bit of introduction to the promises and the fetch, and how the promises are built in objects. Whenever we like make a promise, like we will call the fetch, we immediately return a promise as well. The promise is initially gonna be empty, so we don't know when this response is gonna come back. Maybe their server is slow for some reason and we get the response back in 5 minutes. So promise object was already there when we call it with the fetch. It talked to the xhr part of fetch, talks to that their server, and the other thing it does what is like creates a promise. That promise is going to be empty, which is going to be fulfilled when this data comes back. So whatever the that data is, that data comes back, it's going to be fulfilled automatically in that promise object. When we fill that promise object with that, we're going to display that the function, apply some callback functionality to that data, whatever we want. We will see more of it hopefully. See you later. Bye.